It's the wonder of nature, baby!
Good evening, everybody. It's Thursday night. It's 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The, only standard time, in my opinion. And welcome back. What's going on, Brand? Oh, there we are. I guess I have. It'd be really nice, StreamYards, if you hit the main camera button, that the brand video would just disappear. Because I don't need it if I'm hitting the main camera. I don't need it anymore. Good evening, everybody. It is a windy night here at the home of Readout Productions. So the house may occasionally shake while we're streaming. Maybe, hopefully not. You might hear it. God, this winter, we've had some of the worst windstorms up here. A few weeks ago, we had like what was it, 4 or 5 power poles this direction. They all just got clean cut by the wind. And then for like a week, the local power company just kind of had the electrical lines just sitting in the grass because there was nothing to do because every day the wind was consistent. And they're like, I don't think we have to wait till we have like 72 hours of no wind before we even feel safe going out and fixing those lines. And if you're joining in tonight, be sure to comment, and be sure if you're on the YouTube stream, we got a little poll. I've been trying to do a poll every week just for the fun of it. This week's poll is, which is the superior Indiana Jones movie? Yes, for reasons that in the middle of last night, I was like, I want to watch something. I mean, I sat here like 20 minutes. I want to do something I haven't done in a while. I want to watch a movie. I've been pretty preoccupied lately with Readout production stuff and work stuff. So I decided I want to watch Indiana Jones. Now, personally, my favorite is Raiders of the Lost Ark. I like the original, but I'm like, I haven't seen Last Crusade in a while, so put that in, and that's why I made the poll about Indiana Jones. I don't think there's much else relating to Indiana Jones on tonight's stream, but we got the original trilogy down there in the polls. Pick which one you think is superior. Anyways, we got two primary stories tonight, but first, I just got to share this little goofy thing I saw the other day while just scouting the net. Where are you? Are you here? Yep. Oh, you're later. So I don't know why this showed up in one of my social media feeds. There is an estate sale currently occurring in Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama. It was the collection of Royce G. Kershaw Jr., no affiliation with any other Royces we may or may not know here at Readout Productions. And apparently this estate has a variety of antique transportation. And I say transportation, of course you got your classic vehicles, but yeah, there's one of the items is a full steam locomotive from the W.T. Smith Lumber Company. And what's especially interesting about this, if you read down here, incredible 1913 Baldwin 260 mogul steam locomotive with the tender, with a Hank Williams connection. Yes, connected to the famed country singer Hank Williams Sr. It is said that on December 3rd, 1952, Hank Williams recorded the last song he wrote at KWKH studio called The Old Log Train. The folk song is an account of his late father, Lon Williams, as a train engineer in the 20s and 30s in Chapman, Alabama. Williams worked for the W.T. Smith Lumber Company as a train conductor on a Baldwin mogul steam locomotive hauling logs from the lumber company. Now, I don't think they know for certain if this is the one that he worked on, but considering there was only a handful of these type of locomotives associated with this lumber company, chances are that Hank Williams' father may not have been on one of these steam locomotives. So there's the tie to it. So this locomotive may or may not have inspired a Hank Williams song, one of the last songs that he ever wrote in his short life. And it's currently for sale at an auction right now. So yeah. uh if if I had the place to store it, this would be the time I would ask that if anybody wanted to go support me on Ko-fi, and we can pull our resources together so yours truly can possess a locomotive with Hank Williams connections. But I don't necessarily have a place to put a 260 Mogul locomotive. No, I really don't. So somebody's going to end up with that. Hopefully a museum. Maybe it can be restored to operating condition. Who knows? Who knows? And there's just some other cool stuff here. Oh, 59 Cadillac limousine that was once owned by the state of Alabama, used by 5 former governors. Since, yep, by both. Yep, 5 brothers. Okay, I was checking there. Yep, it was used by the infamous governor, George Wallace. Yep, his name's there. Another one-off custom RV, built by the father of the estate. Beautiful 1914 Cadillac. Got this small, looks like a miniature size locomotive for amusement rides. A lot of stuff going into this auction. A lot of stuff. So, yeah, I don't know, I just saw it on my stream, and I had a comment about it. I mean, locomotives. We like trains here at Readout Productions. We really do like trains. In any case, that is not our main story. Our first major story we're going to talk about tonight is not the headline, because it is Cavuary Steel here on Uncut History. So I know we're going to be talking about a battle on a golden hill. We're going to get to that, don't worry. But we got to talk about a cave tonight. It's February. It's Cavuary here at Readout Productions, where I show how much I love theology, geography, graphology.
Yeah, geography.
Geology.
Yeah, well, actually, seismology.
Yeah, but something like that. We're going to talk about rocks because, yeah, rocks can be very boring, but I promise you, it can also be very interesting, because where recorded history tends to be a very finite window, very small period of Earth's history, the history of rocks, it goes on for millions of years, which could be cool and boring all at the same time. There we are. Welcome to Oregon Caves, National Monument and Nature Preserve. So, yep, we're going all the way to the West Coast, place I've never been, most likely never will be, because, there's a lot of miles between Pennsylvania and the West Coast. So, yeah, Ko-fi page again. So we're going to Oregon Caves, National Monument and Nature Preserve, which is actually located in southwestern Oregon. And this cave is its claim to fame, it's one of the few marble caves in the United States of America. So in the previous weeks, we've been talking about caves, solution caves, where acidic groundwater and rainwater have seeped into the ground and over millions of years dissolved limestone. Well, in this case, it dissolved marble. That's some pretty acidic water, I guess. They got a lot of acid in the water, I guess, in the western half of the country. And we're going to get into all about how all these formations were created, why there's a marble cave and not typical limestone. And the first thing you need to understand is, and we'll go there in one moment, this cave is located in the very northern tip of the Siskiyou Mountains. Now, this is a major mountain range that runs a good length of the state of California, and its northern tip just peeks over into Oregon, allowing us to be called Oregon Caves and, well, not California Caves. Now, the mountain range was created many moons ago. We're looking at, tens of millions of years ago, when you had 2 types of rock collide into each other. One was the Rattlesnake Creek Terrace, which is made of all sorts of different minerals, including limestone. And you also had the Grayback Pluton, which is just a fancy word for granite. So you had these 2 layers of rock colliding, and there is dispute over why they collided. Some sources claim that it's because of a massive ancient rock slide tumbled one into the other, but it seems more likely that this was caused by the subduction of tectonic plates. You got the northwest part of the United States is part of that ring of fire of those tectonic plates, all that volcanic activity. We talked a little bit about this last May when we did a stream on the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. So in either case, most likely through the subduction of plates, these two rock layers collided into each other, and the intense heat from their collision basically heated the limestone and its compounds into a much stronger mineral, that being marble. So that's how we ended up with marble in a portion of this mountain system. Now, interestingly enough, if you go beyond the cave system, there's not a lot of more traces of marble. The marble is just in this one block in the Miscue mountain range. Now, the cave itself began forming about 1.7 million years ago, so far more recent compared to the mountains that it's lodged into. And it's created like how any other caves are. Cracks form into the surface of the mountain. Acidic water seeps in, and over millions of years begins breaking down and dissolving. Now, the interesting thing is you're going to see these formations be very particularly white from the photographs and the videos I've been watching in the lead up to the stream. They have a much cleaner surface than other caves, and that's in part because of it being marble, a much stronger material. Now, the oldest formation in this cave, they're going to go back to about 370,000 years ago. Okay, I was getting ready, like, okay, we're getting off the big vessel of millions. Now we're on to the tiny little raft of hundreds of thousands. Really recent, guys. I laugh, but it's the truth when you're talking about the history of rocks, the history of speleology, geology, all that wonderful.
Yeah, geography.
Geology.
Yeah, well, actually, seismology.
So yeah, I love that clip. I love that movie. Tremors is one of my favorites. I literally could I could probably speak a whole day with just using one-liners from that movie. It'd get very annoying very quickly, but it'd be funny for 5 minutes. Now, the brain breaking, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah, that's right. So the oldest formations, 370,000 years ago. Now, the earliest traces of some type of wildlife, at least in the way we would understand, not talking about fossils of ancient aquatic life, which there are a lot of small fossils throughout this cave system. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. But we're talking about animals. We're talking about jaguars. We're talking about bears. There's bones of black bears going back 50,000 years have been found in this cave system. And that brings me to the image earlier. These bones are far more recent, 3,000 years, very recent. These were associated with a bear, and they were actually found in the late 1990s when the Park Service was renovating a pathway inside the cave, and they now have on display for tours. So there's bones of bears that found shelter and never came out of Oregon Cave 3,000 years ago. Now, there's not a lot of traces of human interaction with the cave. No real, like when we talked about Mammoth Cave 2 weeks ago, we found all these artifacts of indigenous life using the cave. There's no evidence of that when it comes to Oregon caves. So the first recorded human interaction with the cave comes in 1874. And that is when this gentleman off to the left, Elijah Davidson, a little backstory about him. He's originally born in Illinois, and he actually his family moved to the region where the cave was located, and, well, the region became aptly named the Illinois River Valley. I didn't research where the origin of that name came from. I'm going to have to take a guess that a lot of Illinois people moved to that region, and that's why it's named. I mean, Davidson is a perfect example. And when he grew up, he tried for several years being a gold miner in the region. But in the 1870s, for lack of better terms, he decided, I am done working for the rich man. I'm going to take my family. We're going up into the holler, and we're going to live off the land. And by off the land, we're going to hunt all the wild game, all of them grizzly bears. So Davidson, you got way more courage than I ever will, going one-on-one with the grizzly bears in the mountains of Southern Oregon. Godspeed, Mr. Davidson. Well, in 1874, his favorite dog, Bruno, was tracking down a bear. And after some time, Mr. Davidson lost track of Bruno. And eventually he came across a opening in the side of the mountain. Davidson snuck inside and, well, he discovered this cave system. And he explored around, more focused on trying to locate his dog rather than the formations he was seeing. However, he had to call off his search when he ran out the last of his matches. So he had to go out of the cave and probably was quite disturbed. I don't know if he found his dog or not. I'm going to assume he did not. I didn't find any records if he did or didn't. Please, somebody let me know. Please tell me Bruno was okay. I would like a happy end to the story. But it seems since he didn't go back to the cave for another 2 years, maybe that's why he stayed away from this cave system. It wasn't until the spring of 1877 that his brother was visiting and must have heard over dinner this story of a cave and how he lost his dog in the cave to a bear. And his younger brother's like, "That's a great idea. Let's go into this cave, a literal bear den. It's going to be awesome, Eli. It's going to be awesome." Now, they didn't just go by themselves. They brought a couple other gentlemen with them, and they went up back into this cave system and properly explored it. They explored the lower levels of the cave, at least until they hit a large wall, had a few crevices underneath, but there was a lot of water at that point, and they're like, we don't want to go for the icy water. And Mr. Davidson will tell the story of the cave throughout the 1870s. And a gold miner in the region by the name of Walter C. Birch, who is in the left side of that newspaper clipping, he decided, well, if Davidson ain't going to do anything with that cave, maybe I can do something with it. So he's going to take his friend, who's photographed to the right, and they're going to go back to the cave in the mid 1880s, and they do intensive exploring, and they hit that wall. And unlike Davidson, who didn't want to get into that icy water, well, Birch had no problems. He's a hardened gold miner of several years. So for several days, he sits in this 2-inch deep body of freezing water. And I should mention there actually is a underwater stream that cuts through the cave. It's one of the reasons why the cave system even exists. Now, the little creek started at the top of the cave, and then over the years, it just kind of wound its way down to the lower level, where Birch is there trying to cut open his crevice, because he's like, there got to be something beyond this if there's water coming through. Well, eventually decides to blow a hole in the cave, and that must have been probably several stalactites are probably falling down around him. Birch, you're a much more courageous man than I ever will be. So he blasts this hole, pulls his way through this icy, wet crawl space, and finds, yes, there is more to this cave system. And he also is going to discover this massive column. And we talked earlier about stalactites and stalagmites, how they come from opposite ends. They're basically residue being casted by water droplets coming down from the ceiling and piled up with sediment on the floor. Well, if it goes on long enough, you end up with a complete column. And we're going to see what he called the Great Column later on. And he'll end up exploring a lot of additional passages. A lot of the understanding we have of the Oregon cave system was pioneered by Mr. Birch and company. Now, Mr. Birch hoped that he can turn this into a show cave business, but there's a few problems with that. Oregon Caves sits way up on the side of a mountain. I mean, way up. Even to this day, if you want to go explore it, you got to take this very narrow road up the mountain that dead ends at the visitor center. And in fact, they close in the winter months every year because it's just not accessible due to the snowfall. So if we're talking the late 19th century, I don't think people are going to hike all the way up there. And I don't think you're getting your carriages up there. So he tried to run a show cave business. It really didn't work out. A couple other different property holders over the years tried their hand. It really didn't work out just because of how far away it was. But for how far away it was, it also meant it was the surrounding area, all this thick forest, this beautiful riverway, the Illinois River Valley was relatively unscathed. So in 1909, President Taft is going to sign an executive order that is going to turn over 400 acres around the entrance to Oregon Caves as a national monument. And I should also add that in 2014, so a century later, the U.S. Congress authorized 4,000 more acres to be attached to the national monument as a nature preserve. Hence why we call it today Oregon Caves National Monument and Nature Preserve. And my cats are jumping, making noise, jumping for joy. Never, don't take a cat into a cave. It's not so much that they'll get lost, but more they're just going to cause total destruction. So, here we are. Here is a map of the Oregon cave system. And I know the state of Oregon is called Oregon, but I got a Yinzer accent, and probably for the rest of this video, I'm just going to say Oregon. Deal with it. I am sorry, people from Oregonians. Sorry. So, off to the left there, you're going to see a map of this cave system, and visitors tend to enter through the main entrance, which I believe is also the historic entrance that Davidson found. And the lower level is this map really doesn't do credit of how this cave is laid out. It is going straight back into the mountainside of the Cisco Mountains. The Cisco? Yeah, Siskiyou. Yeah, it's going into the back of the Siskiyou Mountains. It goes, its greatest depth is 200 feet underneath the mountains. So it's not relatively going that this is all going down. Actually, if you look at an elevation map, a lot of these passages are going up the side of the mountain. But since you're going farther back, it means there's more of the mountain above your head. So it gets deeper and deeper by default. In any case, you have the lower level from the main entrance, and you're actually going to have that stream running through. And I believe it's the only cave in Oregon that the public can visit that actually has a stream running through it. And that stream actually comes from the top of the mountain where it slips through the sediment. And then for years, it churned its way through the upper passages. Now it's mainly down at the lower passages. And it's actually called Cave Creek on the outside, aptly named. But once you go inside, you got a much cooler name. It's called the River Styx. Much better than Cave Creek. I like the River Styx. Much better name. So that's what you're going to find in a lot of the lower part of this cave is very wet. This is what we would call the new portion of the cave because this is where the water is still carving deeper and deeper into the ground. And if you look over to the right, you're going to see the largest room in the cave at 220 feet deep. This is the ghost room. It's named that not because it's haunted, but because the calcite in this room, because of the water runoff coming through there, is very shiny white. So it looks as white as a ghost. And it's a massive room. And in fact, I'm going to jump over here. Oh no, what did I do? I don't know what I did. I want to show you a video here just so you can get an idea because every photograph I found in the ghost room does not do this formation justice. Yes, I need back at you. I don't know why I deleted it in the first place. So we are currently watching video from Desert Sky Adventures. I'm going to drop a link in for the full video shortly. He went to explore Oregon Caves just last year. This is the ghost room. It's massive. It's huge. And also in this room, you're going to see a lot of different fault lines, basically cracks in the rock. And that is a result of all those different rock layers smashing into each other millions of years ago. And when they crashed into each other, because it was likely from two tectonic plates subducting, what ended up happening was a little bit of an opening for where magma could rise up. And when that magma rised up, if you go into the ghost room, you're going to see areas how far the magma got into the cracks. And there's still char marks essentially from that when you go up and look. So yeah, the ghost room is this humongous cave or humongous room in this relatively large cave system. And you're just looking up right now into one of the formations called Paradise Lost. And this formation has very unique flowstone. Almost looks like perfectly carved chandeliers. And again, that's in large part due to being marble. So the marble adds to this very white coating these formations have. Usually, if this is a typical limestone cave, the formations are a lot more yellow when you shine a light to it. But yeah, the ghost room is just humongous. So I'm going to drop a link if you want to see the full video. And I do recommend, the gentleman is actually, who makes this channel, Desert Sky Adventures, is actually based out of Tombstone, Arizona. So, there's going to be a lot of good content coming from Tombstone. So Please go check that out since we played a bit of his footage. Please go support Desert Sky Adventures and see what he saw when he explored Oregon caves. Now, this photograph has some explaining to do. So, though the National Park Service owned the sites began in 1909, they didn't operate the tourism business. The actual tours in the cave and the facilities to host visitors, that was up to private hands. Again, it's all the way up the mountain. Federal government ain't going up and doing that. So those daring enough, you want to run a business up there, go up there and run it. Godspeed. And one of the more interesting marketing ideas that came up with in 1922, a group of local businessmen decided to get a group of tour guides dressed up as cavemen, and they would do the full archetype. We are cavemen. Ooh, ooh, ah, ah. Look at our bone. And they're wearing fur pelts and everything. And apparently at one point they even had a caveman themed wedding hosted in the cave in 1936. Oh God. Oh God, history's entertaining. So I had to bring that up. That is just a fascinating part of the cave's history. But yeah, the actual tours were operated by private hands all the way until 2001, where since then now park rangers do the guided programs inside the cave. Off to the left is the Great Column. That was the first new feature that Mr. Birch found back in the 1880s. And the photos don't do it justice. I've seen other images where people were standing next to it. It is this massive column. And again, this is the end effect of what happens when you have water dripping through into a cave, pulling sediment down and creating stalactites and stalagmites. What happens when they end up falling together? You end up with this lovely column. And off to the right again is that Paradise Lost formation, the flow stone making picture perfect chandeliers coming down the side. And the Paradise Lost is kind of in the upper portion of the ghost room. Off to the left there, you're going to see the river Styx as it flows through the lower parts. It's not very deep. It's only a few inches. I mean, the river is exaggerated, of course, but interesting name nevertheless. And off to the right there, you're going to see some more examples of flowstone in the cave. That is the Niagara Falls formation. And I feel every cave system is obligated to have a formation named after Niagara Falls. I feel that's required. To be fair, Mammoth Cave called theirs the Frozen Niagara, not just simply Niagara Falls. It's this massive flowstone, which is only 1/100th of an inch thick. So it's massive, but so paper thin, very fragile. And the photograph doesn't show it, but there's a variety of 19th century signatures from explorers on the flowstone. Oh, I guess that's all. That's all I got on Oregon caves. This is definitely one I've noticed. A lot of the rooms are very tight, very small. The lower half of the cave's very wet, so it's still actively being created. But Oregon Caves National Monument and Nature Preserve, well known for being one of the few marble caves to explore in the United States of America. And if I ever get the chance to go out to Oregon, I gotta go see this. This just looks like a beautiful cave. And the whole wildlife around it is very well preserved. Like I mentioned, there's just like one road that goes up to it all the way up the Siskiyou Mountains. So it's pretty remote where the cave system's located. So yeah, I'm gonna get a drink of water. Hold on one moment. any Google site or any web browser, we just get smashed. We get punched with all this negative, all this, we're going to die, we're going to die, we're going to die. It's the end times. Just remember.
There's always an alien battle cruiser or a Carillion death ray or an intergalactic plague that's about to wipe out life on this miserable little planet. The only way these people get on with their happy lives is they do not know about it.
Yes, I always have that clip on speed dial. All right, well, we're just going to move right into our main topic tonight, and that is the Battle of Golden Hill. You'll understand why there's air quotes around that later on. First of all, gotta get rid of that. Move in from the studio. I don't have any images. I really don't have much to show you for this topic. So this is a lot of talking. So, you know what that means? Run for the hills. I have to talk. Oh no, what a nightmare. I'm going to go down a tirade about obscure facts of history. And by the end of it, I'll be speaking a million miles per hour and you will understand what I'm saying. So the Battle of Golden Hill. We all know about Boston Massacre. Occurred in March of 1770. A group of British soldiers were being heckled by American colonists not far in downtown Boston. Ended up that the hecklers provoked at least one soldier into discharging their musket. Several volleys were fired into the crowd, and several people were dead at the end of it. And many traditionally see this as the first act of violence by the British Crown toward Americans. And this is where the revolution started. The American Revolution began toward its culmination of happening in Lexington and Concord a few years later. Well, you could probably guess, since we're talking about that in Redoubt Productions, that's not fully true. That is giving you a very finite window. It's true that the United States, part of what led to the American Revolution, our country being created, was that the New England colonies were outraged over the taxes being imposed on them to pay for the French and Indian War. But just highlighting what was happening in New England kind of disregards the rest of the colonies, and it's very unfair. There were a lot of different influences that weighed on the mind of the founding fathers and of people who decided they no longer want to be part of the British Empire. That was a very lofty thing to say in the mid 18th century, especially in the American colonies. And would you be shocked if I told you that 6 weeks before the Boston Massacre, a very similar incident occurred in New York City, and you've not heard about it? I have vaguely been aware about this event, but this week, for whatever reason, my brain went down the rabbit hole on it, and I decided we're going to talk about it tonight here on Uncut History. So let's wind the clocks back to when the French and Indian War ended. Now, the French and Indian War ended, which was part of the global 7 Years' War, the largest conflict in at least recent history at that point. I mean, it was fought all over the world. North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa. Imagine trying to coordinate armies simultaneously across the oceans with armies that are in linear formations and firing muskets. And this is all being done by handwritten communication. It still astounds me to this day. And why that time period is generally the field of his study I'm most involved with. Just fascinating. So war ends, and one of Britain's main headquarters for the military during the conflict was in New York. And they actually had a couple barracks in New York City. Now, when the war ended, the British Empire like, oh God, we're broke. We got to make up for it. How are we going to make up for it? Well, for every 26 pounds somebody in London's paying to the crown, Americans only have to pay £1. Maybe we should raise the taxes and make them equal to the taxes here in the home islands. Parliament's like, that's a good idea. So they passed that, really thinking, nobody's going to have a problem with it. This will actually make the colonists feel like they're equal to the people on the home islands. Well, we know how the colonists responded to that. They didn't like that tax on the tea, on the stamp, the Quartering Act. They didn't like all these requirements from the crown to compensate for the French and Indian War. And of course, all bunch of drama happens up in Boston, but just in the equal amount of time there's protests in Boston, there's protests in New York City. In fact, in October of 1765, when a boat comes along that is going to deposit stamps, supposed to offload the stamps that there will be a tax to, 2,000 New Yorkers meet the boats on the wharf and ward them off, protesting them away. So yeah, from the start, New York No, they're not enthused with the taxes. Later on, in early 1766, a second attempt to bring these stamps into New York actually saw New Yorkers board the ship, take the stamps, and destroy them. Sounds similar to something the people in Massachusetts are going to do in 1773. Wonder where they got the idea from. So, yeah, New York, right off the bat, we do not like these new laws being imposed upon us by the British Crown. But perhaps the one that was most controversial in New York was the Quartering Act. Now, we don't often hear about the Quartering Act because today we don't really argue. We don't typically have the issue of our government trying to force its soldiers into our housing. You know why they can't do it? Because of the response to the Quartering Act. The British were requiring the colonies to have their civilians board soldiers because there was not enough room in the barracks. And why were these soldiers staying in mass? Well, it's to impose the taxes. And it was also to make sure that the Americans didn't keep causing problems out west and get into fighting with the Native Americans. In 1763, a boundary was put between the colonies and a native reservation, the boundary being the Appalachian Mountains, which upset a lot of colonists, particularly in the middle and southern colonies, because they had some very valuable investments. They thought they were going to get to own that land once the French and Indian War was over. They were told, nope, that's going to be a native reservation to uphold treaties we made to win the French and Indian War. And also, we brought all these soldiers here to make sure that the law is upheld. Though they didn't really uphold that law as much as they stuck around the cities and agitated the colonists, requiring a lot of demands for food stuff, for boarding. You get the drift. So the Quartering Act really irritated people in large urban areas. Nowhere place bigger than New York City. And for this reason, all right, get over it. Come on, fingers. Third Amendment. No soldiers shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. This, what we're talking about, is directly leading into why we have the Third Amendment. So, everybody was outraged that the British are requiring the New York Assembly to tell its citizens, you have to quarter these troops. Well, the New York Assembly had an interesting way of responding to this. They didn't respond to it. So beginning in 1766, they just ignored the Quartering Act. They would, anytime it was the governor would try to bring it up, we don't have time to talk about that. Oh, time's up. Our session's over. Have a good day, sir. Have a good day, sir. They just kept ignoring it and dodging it. Now, the royal governor was getting really ticked off about this. And the royal governor and all the colonies had a power. I should say typically had this power to dissolve their colonial assembly. The assembly was really just there as an advisory body to the governor to give the colonists the feeling that they have representation, which they, in the grand scheme of things, didn't. Because if the assembly disagreed with the royal governor, the governor could just dissolve them. And the royal governor of New York did this not once, but twice in the 1760s, whenever the assembly would not agree to enforce the Quartering Act. Now, this was a peaceful way of protesting the Quartering Act. As for the civilians themselves who had to deal with these soldiers who were being jammed into these barracks, there was over 1,000 soldiers in New York. They're being jammed in these stuffy barrack buildings. The soldiers are upset. And the Sons of Liberty, yes, same entity who's coordinating protests up in Boston, they also have an entity in New York City, and they're orchestrating much more vocal responses to the Quartering Act. And beginning in 1766, they started establishing a Liberty Pole, and it was built right in front of the soldier barracks in New York City. It started as a simple pole with a flag saying Liberty. The soldiers knew what it meant. It is a simple, na, we're not going to listen to you. And every time the Sons of Liberty went out and put this pole up, the British soldiers came out of the barracks. Initially, first they would topple it over. Then the Sons of Liberty would build a new pole. Then they'd come out with hatchets and cut down the pole. And then the Sons of Liberty would come out and wrap iron bands around the pole. And then by 1770, this act had gone so ridiculous that the British soldiers are plotting to blow up the Liberty Pole. So this went on for several years until January of 1770. Now, by this point, there had been a small compromise made by the state assembly that agreed to pay the British Army, to compensate them £1,800 for boarding. That's nothing. So the idea was, okay, we're going to give the British soldiers £1,800 to pay the colonists so they can stay in their homes. Yeah, that wasn't going to cut it. That was pennies. It wasn't going to cut it. And the soldiers knew it. They're like, this is a joke. This is an insult. We're the crown soldiers. We deserve more than this. So this is when they began plotting. All right, we're done with this pole business. We're just going to blow it up. We're going to send a message. Well, a group of the Sons of Liberty saw one January evening these British soldiers, out there rolling barrels of gunpowder to the Liberty Pole, and somebody cried fire. Now, to cry fire in a wooden city in 18th century North America, will we respond with instant thousands of people rushing down the streets, running back and forth, chaos, bringing buckets, going to get fire engines, because it's a wooden city. You don't fire, never scream that. That's a big no-no. That's like screaming fire into fear. No. But the Sons of Liberty did it anyways. And that was basically done to foil the plans of the Liberty Pole being blown up that night. So the soldiers had to sneak away from the crowd that now formed around the pole, thinking there was a fire. Well, there was going to be, until they cried fire. Soldiers went back to the barracks. And these soldiers were furious. They're like, they just cried fire. Do these people have no decency? Don't they respect anything? So the following morning, the British soldiers decided to storm into Montaigne Tavern. Montaigne Tavern, by the way, is the unofficial headquarters of the Sons of Liberty in New York City, where they would host meetings and, while at those meetings, probably get very, very drunk. So the British soldiers barge in after the morning. Somebody cried fire and wrecked the place to intimidate the Sons of Liberty. Like, okay, stop disrespecting moral codes. You crossed the line, you cried fire, you got everybody up all last night. We're wrecking this place. And the Sons of Liberty, like, you destroyed our property. And they're furious, like, you just destroyed private property. And the British soldier, like, we don't care. You deserve it. This is what you get for disrespecting us, disrespecting moral codes of the time period. And they went back and they were successful in destroying the Liberty Pole later that day. And to add insult to injury, on January 19th, 1770, British soldiers were going around plastering handbills that were insulting the Sons of Liberty and basically criticizing them. You cried fire in a wooden town in 18th century North America, you dirty scoundrels. You are less than human, essentially. So they're plastering these handbills all around town. And two members of the Sons of Liberty in particular were furious at this. They found two British soldiers. They grabbed those British soldiers and decided, we're going to take you to the mayor and we're going to declare punishment. You're besmirching our character. You're crying foul of us. We're taking you right to the mayor to solve this matter. So on January 19th, 1770, the Sons of Liberty do just that, taking these two soldiers to the mayor's house. You got this crowd of protests going out shouting at the mayor. Come on, what are you going to do about this mess? Can we have our Liberty Pole back? Can you put these British soldiers in their place? Stop caving into the Quartering Act. Well, the commander of one of the barracks got wind of this, that two of his soldiers were in the hands of a mob. He gets 20 guys together, fixes bayonets, grabs swords, and they go out on the streets. They go down to the mayor's house to see if they could solve the matter. When they get there, there's just this big shouting contest. And to be quite honest, at this point in the story, I get quite confused on what happened next. Every source I read in the days leading up to the stream were given a different account. Right, because everybody was shouting over each other. Hundreds of people in the streets of New York. Effectively, what happened was the mayor shouted over everybody, told the 20 British soldiers, go back to your barracks. Everybody just go home. The two soldiers, release those two soldiers. Everybody go home. Meanwhile, there was a rumor going about that the British soldiers had attacked were coming out to attack them. That's why they were fixing bayonets. They're coming here to attack, and they've already attacked people earlier in the day, and now they're coming to finish their business. And the 20 British soldiers quickly realized how outnumbered they were and decided, oh, this is going to get bad very quickly. Let's back away, and if we get away from this mob, the mob won't feel threatened by us. Well, the mob decided to chase the British soldiers all the way back to their barracks. They're like, well, we're going to make sure they listen to the mayor. So they're chasing them down the streets of New York. They go down what would now be John Street in downtown New York City, this narrow alley that empties in the 1770s into a large intersection. There was a field of flowers nearby, hence why this region was known as Golden Hill. And it's at this point, this mob is moving down John Street. They're coming up onto Golden Hill. The 20 British soldiers are on top of the hill. They've been ordered by the mayor to go back to their barracks. They're going in the opposite direction. So they're like, to get to the barracks, we got to go through that mob. And apparently the commander ordered for his troops to cut through the mob. And what followed was a very violent cutting through that mob. So these 20 British soldiers marched through the mob, bayonets fixed. Several of the mob at this point had clubs in their hands, and any person with a club that a soldier found, they went after them with their bayonets and their swords. Several people were injured from bayonet stabs and sword slashes. There's some accounts of the British soldiers got rowdy and chased some of the mob into homes on John Street and continued hacking at them. Now, officially, there are no claims of deceased. Nobody's been tied directly to being killed by this incident. It seems like it was a non-lethal affair. But again, you're having a lot of people getting stabbed by triangular bayonets and getting slashed with swords. There got to be some bumps and bruises that are going to last a lifetime as a result. So this was the Battle of Golden Hill. It was these British soldiers cutting their way through, trying to listen to the mayor's orders to go back to the barracks, or require them to go right for this angry mob. You can imagine how this looked in the American press the following day. We got American colonists injured at the hands of British soldiers. Look how violent they are, how barbaric they are. And you wouldn't surprise if I told you that a few months later, the British Army decided to remove most of the garrison then present in New York to Pensacola, Florida, to get out of the hotbed. And they also is because 6 weeks after the Battle of Golden Hill, a more violent altercation occurred between colonists and British soldiers in a dispute over British taxes, British codes, and that was the Boston Massacre, which got most of the publicity because Golden Hill has no deaths tethered to it. There's no martyrs made out of it for the cause of American independence. Meanwhile, Boston Massacre, 5 people dead. You've all seen the Paul Revere lithograph, the wood engraving, makes for great publicity. Now, in the long run, the Battle of Golden Hill, its effect was, showed how important the Quartering Act was into sparking the American Revolution. We always talk about the taxes. We don't often get to talk about the Quartering Act, that people did not want British soldiers being forced into their homes and that they had to be forced to take care of these soldiers. A lot of Americans are like, why do these soldiers have to stay around? The French and Indian War is over. They want it. They need to go home now. We're good. We don't need to be babysat by the British Army. So that was a lot of the strife that was created in the colonies from the Quartering Act. And this is an act of violence directly relating to that strife. Now, as I mentioned, eventually the opposition to the Quartering Act will be immortalized into the Third Amendment and the Bill of Rights attached to the U.S. Constitution. And New York gets a bad rap when you talk about the Declaration of Independence. New York famously abstained from that vote. Not that they voted yes or no. They just simply abstained. Their representatives have said, we don't have the authorization. We didn't come here to vote for independence. And a lot of people said, well, New York's filled with loyalists and they're not loyal to the patriot cause. I think the Battle of Golden Hill proves otherwise. And again, I love that little bit that 2,000 New Yorkers on the wharf meeting those ships with freaking stamps on them. They were getting ready to go to war over freaking stamps in 1765. I think that shows you, yep, good portion of New York was fully committed to what would eventually become the Patriot cause. They didn't know it at the time, but eventually would become that. So that is the Battle of Golden Hill, a often overlooked act of aggression leading up to the American Revolution. The battle, the Boston Massacre before the Boston Massacre, essentially. All right. Now, I have another story to talk about, but first, I need to drink water. Getting thirsty. So, I got news that earlier this week there was a certain protest in Washington, D.C., which saw two people throwing red powder over the glass cases that house the U.S. Constitution. This was part of a climate activist protest that was done over Valentine's Day week in Washington, D.C. And the two individuals that were involved with this desecration of the U.S. Constitution the day prior had been arrested for blocking traffic on the parkway around Washington, D.C. And at least one of these gentlemen was found last November spray painting signage that was next to the 54th Massachusetts monument, or at least a bronze version of it that's housed in an art museum. And, well, it's bad enough that well, actually, it's far worse. The worst thing you could do in the United States of America is throw red powder on this document that gives us our liberties. But if you're on Redoubt Productions, you decide to throw paint even near a Civil War monument, you know what that means. So I debate about showing the actual footage. I'm not giving the time of day, guys. Screw them. They don't deserve it. I'll tell you what they did, but I'm not going to show you their faces and make them famous. But you see this time and time again, any activists for that matter, but it's particularly the climate activists. You know, a lot of these climate activists are in their youth. They're my age. They could spend their time, effort, and resources finding solutions to this climate problem they're talking about. They can find ways to reduce waste of products. They can use their time and energy. They can go study. How do we find ways to reduce our waste? How do we make a cleaner environment? They can spend all their time doing that. Nobody would have a complaint. They'd be hailed as potentially heroes. But no, how do they spend their time? They go to every single public space and impede daily life. Now, the argument is made that by doing this is a peaceful protest. And we're allowed to do this, and that this is going to draw attention. You're going to draw yourself attention. It ain't going to be the attention you want. Instead of getting people to be sympathetic to you, now you have people wanting to punch your face in because you're blocking their way to go to work. You're impeding other people's means of achieving a decent living. People aren't going to be too kind to that. So, are you getting their attention? Yeah. Is it for the good? No. And when you go about and are trying to desecrate historical documents, the very fabric, you are literally you're trying to literally desecrate the very document that gives you the right to protest. This is counterproductive. Not a good image. Not good at all. Can't you use your energy to find some solution to the world's problems? Why do you got to make more? I think, is that all I have to say about that? I think that's all I have to say about that. I don't know. Just want to get that off my chest. It's so counterintuitive. It's our right for free. It's our right to free speech to impede everybody's daily life and try to tarnish the thing that gives us the right to speak our mind. I know it's really cliche, but I'm going to quote a fictional character. With great power also comes great responsibility. We have a lack of responsibility and I would say all generations of America have at one point they lack responsibility. But as we get with each new generation, have you noticed people are becoming increasingly irresponsible? To be able to wield the power of the U.S. Constitution, you must respect it, and you must be responsible that you know when and when not to use these powers. That, in my opinion, tarnishing that very document that gives you the power to speak, that's an abuse of power. And also, there's entities that are apparently funding these climate activists because they go all over the place. They go all across the country, the whole world. And they show up at one point in the Louvre to tarnish art. They show up the next moment in D.C. to destroy the Constitution. They show up everywhere. They show up on every single street. They show up at Burning Man. They show up everywhere. There's these very influential people backing them, causing this disruption. Where's the solution? Why can't you take your money and invest it into people trying to solve the problems? Why are you taking your money and investing it into people just causing more problems and disrupting things and not creating solutions? I don't have the I think I have the answers to it, but I don't think the hate book and the TubeView would allow me to say it. But just gonna leave that out there. Why are people with a lot of money investing and sending these people around causing destruction instead of investing that money into the problem solvers? Okay, that's my rant. Don't spray paint next to the 54th Massachusetts monument. That's a big rule here on Redoubt Productions. Don't go near that monument. I get angry. I get angry at all the monuments, but the 54th, because the 54th Massachusetts monument always seems to, it always gets desecrated for very counterintuitive reasons. It's always because people are protesting. They're upset. Let's say a lot of people to do it. We're upset at the history that's taught to us because it's not more inclusive. So what we're going to do is we're going to erect the monument that is dedicated to one of the first all-black regiments in the United States military and went on to lay the groundwork for future integration of other ethnicities into the U.S. military. Very counterintuitive to just desecrate that monument. Don't go near it. I get very mad when people go near that particular monument. I had a whole rant a few months ago on Uncut History about how if we have an issue that the disputes over monuments, there should be a healthy discourse. Don't go out there and just wreck crap. You're counterintuitive. You're not progressing our understanding of history. You're just destroying everything. Nah, not worth it. All right. Well, we are nearing the end of tonight's stream. I figured tonight was going to be a relatively short stream. I know the past few weeks I was there like several weeks. We had 2-hour plus streams. I was getting pretty winded. And all this week, I've been nose to the grindstone. I try to always be nose to the grindstone, but especially these past few weeks, trying to crank out as much content as I can. Because I know here, once we hit spring, my college classes will be returning. Work will be ramping up again. So a lot of things are going to be preventing me from going out in the field and documenting history. So I want to get enough of a backlog built up that when I become my access is restricted to producing content, I got a backlog I can work off of till I get to summer. So nose to the grindstone, a lot of good stuff coming out on the channel. The Robert E. Lee video is doing surprisingly good. I'm very surprised by its turnouts, and I hope it keeps doing good performance. So very happy about the viewership it's getting. I'm very excited. Maybe it means it's just maybe does it mean I need to do more Gettysburg videos? I thought I was overindulging on the Gettysburg videos because our next major trip here on Redoubt Productions, I talked about earlier, we're going to be doing American Revolution stuff. So that'll be coming out hopefully in spring 2024. We'll have some American Revolution videos of retracing history. So don't tell me now that everybody's getting into the American Civil War on my channel. It's like, oh, I'm trying to go, I want to do something different. YouTube's like, you must enter to the algorithm. If we say you must make videos about cats, you will make videos about cats. And if they do ask me to make videos about cats, I got 1, 2, I don't know where the third one is. She's probably the one that's making all sorts of noise out in the hallway. So I got a good cast if that's what the algorithm decides Redoubt Productions has to become. But hopefully we don't get that desperate. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Stay tuned. But before we depart tonight, I do want to shill. It's been a while since I've shilled a piece of fiction, new piece of fiction that's being introduced into the zeitgeist of our shared culture. So let's go right back over here. So, Author John A. Douglas shouted us out just a few days ago on his stream, and actually he has a live stream happening right now, which if I'm going to end now, I might have the chance to get to see the tail end of, because he has a Lord Otter on it. I want to hear it live. Anyways, so a few days ago on his stream, he had the offers of this book out. And well, the cover alone's awesome. And then I saw it posted on Twitter yesterday, and I read the synopsis, and it's even more awesome. So now I'm going to read it to you guys, because it's freaking awesome. And this is Doomsday Retcon by Jason Anspach and Ryan Williamson. U.S. Cavalry Trooper Nephi Bennett's Humvee went from Panama to hell in the blink of an eye. Now he needs to find his way back home, if he lives that long. The year is 1989. America has just invaded Noriega's Panama, and Special Ed Bennett's platoon of cavalry scouts, cavalry, it's not cavalry, cavalry's religious, cavalry scouts are in country with, frankly, not a whole lot to do. Fair enough, that's a good description of the Panama invasion for some of the troops that went down there. Until the freak rainstorm that somehow transport the entire platoon, Humvees, weapons and all, to another world. A world controlled by a wicked Aztec god, the land of the black sun. In a heartbeat, the scouts find themselves fighting for their lives against savage beasts, witches, zombies, subhuman tribes seeking sacrifices, and even themselves. Fuel runs low, ammo grows scarce, and their only allies are a tribe of female warriors and a single fledgling sorceress with a decidedly mean streak. But the fun has only begun. Things in the land of the Black Sun are about to become far more dangerous than Specialist Bennett could have ever imagined, for an ancient evil awaits. And Bennett and his fellow cavalry troopers will meet it with blood and steel. Embark on an adventure of a lifetime with Associated Press's best-selling author Jason Aspect and Ryan Williamson and his brand new military fantasy series. If you're a fan of modern warriors and weapons, laying the hate on the armies of ancient evil, this is just a story for you. So, very, very excited about this. Hopefully I get the time to read it. I got a lot of reading still to do. 564 pages. It's a lot of pages for me. Like, I'm always weird. I can read nonfiction with a breeze. I have no problems reading nonfiction. You give me the thinnest fiction book, I crawled at a snail's pace. I move as slow as George B. McClellan. So I don't know why, but if I can get over my inertia with reading fiction, I definitely got to check out Doomsday Retcon. And you should too. I do have a question, probably will be answered if I go back and re-listen to that John Douglas's stream. Is this going back to like Aztec times in Central America, or is the cavalry troopers being transported to like a pocket dimension where there's like a bunch of things have been transported, like for whatever reason, they've no clipped into this pocket dimension, like the back rooms. But instead of having the back rooms and all of its weird monsters and its liminal space horror, you instead have Aztec god came to life and rules over all these people from different time periods. Because I'm all for that. But that cover's pretty awesome, so you got me in regardless. So I'm going to drop the link for Doomsday Retcon, which will be the first book in the Land of the Black Sun series. Going to drop that down right now. And Fu Man Blue, thank you for tuning in. The bad news is we're about to wrap up. The good news is you can watch the whole replay. And be sure for those that are, because now apparently I'm going to presume somebody's stream just ended because numbers are just going up. Be sure to comment. Actually, if we have a few more minutes, be sure to vote in the poll on the TubeView. I'm going to go over here momentarily and close it down because I want to see what do you thought was the best installment of the Indiana Jones trilogy? And yes, I said trilogy. There are only 3 Indiana Jones movies. Just remember that. Only 3 Indiana Jones movies. No more. No more. All right. Get your votes in, guys. We're going to be closing out in 10, 9, 8, 7, derf, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 2.5, and we're ending. And everybody voted. Everybody voted Raiders of the Lost Ark. I kind of anticipate it. Raiders is the best one. I've heard there's a lot of Raider hate nowadays on the internet. Everybody's like, "Oh, Raiders are so overrated," because everybody talks about, yeah, because it's the best one. And don't be wrong, I enjoy all of them, but Raiders is just the that is the template of what any adventure movie should be. Raiders of the Lost Ark template. If you're gonna make anything adventure, you must watch that movie. Don't copy it 100%, of course, but do your own thing. But you gotta watch that. Gotta watch it. I mean, the shooting the gun, using the gun in the sword fights, the best thing ever. And the whole scene was created because Harrison Ford was sick that day shooting. It came down with like food poison, and they're just like, we're not filming this action sequence. Boom, he's dead. Perfect. That's how all Americans would typically respond in that situation. Boom, no fancy swordplay. Done. Moving on to the rest of our adventure. So yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark's the first one. In my opinion, it is the superior Indiana Jones. Temple of Doom, I don't particularly care for Temple of Doom. I know the internet loves Temple of Doom today. They're like, oh, it's so underrated. I agree. It's still enjoy it. It's just, for the three of them, it's just the most, people like it and don't like it because it's the most different. I guess I'm on the perspective of it's the most different. I think once you get to the small village where the cult's nearby, once we're going into the origin of the cult and what's happened there, once we get to that, everything gets really batshit interesting, but the lead up to it's very, it's a bit of a mess. So I like Temple of Doom for just how different it is, different setting, a different side of Indiana Jones, but also it's just a very alien feeling film. And yeah, well, I got Short Round. The Short Round's an all around big plus. We could always have more short round. He should have just become is this show? Did they make comics by Indiana Jones? The Short Round showed up in our comics. Great character, great side character. I could do without Willie. That was her name, right? Willie, was that her name? I don't like that character. So, and then we got Last Crusade, and the Last Crusade is just awesome. I think what knocks down Last Crusade for me compared to the Raiders of the Lost Ark is simply that they were basically trying to replicate Raiders of the Lost Ark because everybody got upset with Temple of Doom. But it's the good stuff. We like watching Indiana Jones punch Nazis. It's fun. But what makes it so fun to watch and why I enjoyed it last night, Sean Connery. Thank God Sean Connery took that role. It's one of his most iconic, not counting James Bond. Junior, I'm sorry, but they got us. There is a lot of good humor. I think maybe Last Crusade may be the funniest of the three films. What would you say? A's! Yeah, I'll see you Sunday. See you at Captain Garrett's stream. Thank you for tuning in. You know what else is overrated? People that say things they've never seen are overrated. That is true. So yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think, is the best Indiana Jones film. Best plot, best pacing. Temple of Doom is the most different of the trilogy, so it's nice seeing a different side of Indiana Jones, different settings, different environments. But yeah, first like 20 minutes of the film, once we get into the village, because to get to the village, you got to go through we're going to fall thousands of feet from a plane and land in the raft. Got to get through that first. And then Last Crusade, it is a retread of the first film, but Sean Connery is so iconic in it. So yeah, and plus I just love the ending. The whole chain of events, the whole, there's the Holy Grail right there. It's about to fall into the pit. And for Jones Sr. to tell his son, let it go, after his whole life of research, and it's just built up that his life has been the Holy Grail. They kind of ignored his son in his childhood because he was so passionate about studying the Holy Grail. And there he says, just let it go, son. Let it go. I love that scene. Well, I think that's going to do it tonight here on Uncut History. Now, make sure to, if you've not done so already, if you want to hit the like button down below, because it'll let the algorithm know that you do want to see historical videos and not turn this into a cat video channel, because the algorithm's weird. So please make sure to let the algorithm know, no, we want historical content from Redoubt Productions. That's his profession. I don't know what I'll do with making cat video. Oh. So yeah, hit the like button. If you've not done so already, if this is the first time you've seen Readout Productions, well, welcome to the channel. And I encourage you to subscribe here on YouTube, on Rumble, and on the Hate Book, because we tend to post videos pretty frequently, at least on the YouTube and Rumble. We go live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, though there are a few exceptions. Sometimes when I'm on the road, I like doing a stream when I'm actually at the location, and sometimes I take a break because I'm human. Sometimes I'm like, I can't look at the computer today. That's actually going to be me the rest of the week because I've been, again, grinding, a lot of grinding, looking at a computer a lot. So I would appreciate if you consider subscribing here to Readout Productions. And if you want to go the extra mile in support of me, you could purchase me a cup of coffee through the Ko-fi link in the description below, and also through Ko-fi if you want to become a member of this channel. And our member program is called The Garrison. It's just a small fee. You become part of the Garrison that fortifies historical preservation for future generations. And you will get access to notes from live streams such as this one. The notes for this stream should be live right now. All my research relating to Oregon caves as well as the Battle of Golden Hills available right now for Garrison members. And also, we're going to try to do, you also get a couple photographs from behind the scenes wherever I'm going. I'm going to try to get a few other benefits together later in the spring. So yeah, thank you for watching. It is time to hit the music. Where's the music? Where's the music? The music. Where's the music? That's not the music. That's not the music either. Oh no. Where's the music? Ah, there's the music.